Om Shri Sai Ram. My name is Anup Challa, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity to reflect on how my relationship with Swami has grown since I have graduated from the Bal Vikas program and am now continuing in the practice as a young adult. I would like to speak to you today mainly about how I have understood Swami as a friend and Swami as the paragon of love. When I was growing up in the SSE program, I remember thinking of Swami mainly as a disciplinarian. My SSE teachers, to their credit, did a wonderful job of explaining that we could have a very deep, loving relationship with Swami through opening ourselves to his teachings. But as a child who would think of the world very much in black and white in terms of rules, I came to think of Swami's teachings in a more prescriptive sense, that there was a code of conduct that must be followed, and that living according to this code of conduct would not only lead one towards a fulfilling life, but also would lead to uplift of one's community. And this was a solid foundation, even if lacking in my understanding of Swami as a being of love. I left the SSE program with a deep appreciation and respect for Swami and a sense of peace, the knowledge of a sense of peace that would come from being in his presence at least once a week through participation in the Sai Center activities. However, once I went to college, my understanding of the world shifted seismically. I came to understand that the world was not a set of rules, was not a set of guideposts that could be followed and would lead to desired results, that there were complexities in terms of interpersonal relationships that I had less exposure to before starting in school, in terms of global ways of thinking and being that I had, again, less of an appreciation of until I was put in an environment where I was required to understand motivations of human behavior, including my own, and to make difficult decisions on a daily basis to thrive and to seek success and growth within the university environment. And my relationship with Swami was tested quite a bit coming into that sphere. I was without a car and at quite a distance from the local Sai Center. I found my academic schedule to be very demanding, with very little time to be able to go to the center and participate fully in the activities on a weekly basis. And with these pressures and changes and my own understanding of what it meant to be dharmic changing quite rapidly, I felt myself at a crossroads. I felt that while I was prepared to make very clear decisions on my sensibilities, that the interpretation of those decisions and the implementation of how I could continue to survive in such a dynamic environment while having a relationship with Swami was yet to be defined. And that led me to quite a bit of introspection. It led me to think about how I had felt Swami's presence in my life in SSE, and to try to reach more deeply into those aspects of my experience with him to take me through this next chapter. And in doing that, I found myself in a deeper discussion with Swami on a regular basis, where I would speak to him directly, where I would call out to him for guidance when I felt lost or I felt overwhelmed, where in the absence of being able to attend center on a regular basis, I instead needed to carve out even more purposefully daily routines to make sure that I had time for that collection of my thoughts and my receptivity to Swami through quiet. And in doing that, I realized that I could actually create a kinship with Swami at a level that I had never thought possible. That Swami could become a friend, that I could speak with Swami and seek his inspiration on a regular basis as often as I would want, and that I only needed to listen to his inspiration to help make these decisions. And that Swami's inspiration was no different from my own ability to think critically, to absorb information, and to make rational decisions. And in doing this, I came to understand that the secular and the spiritual could not be differentiated. Whereas in SSE, it seemed that there were moral and immoral aspects of life, that there were things that were clearly religious and things that were outside of what we would bring into the center. In collegiate life and onwards, even now as a young adult who's working, I found that those distinctions could not so easily be made, given that we must move in a society in which there are a multitude of perspectives, and that we must find balance among these perspectives, where a black and white sense of right and wrong is almost always impossible to strike. And in doing this, in trying to create a dialogue with Swami that led me to deepen my own confidence in my decision-making and interpretation of the world around me, I also started to find Swami's inspiration in even the most mundane of things. And this sounds quite cliche, but it was a sense of joy and peace that I had experienced in the center, in singing bhajans, or in listening to mythological examples of where God had carried his devotees through difficult situations, that I felt the same sense of comfort even in an evening run, even in a chance to listen to uplifting music, even in chances at interfaith discussions and participation in traditions of other faith practices, like attending Buddhist meditations or attending church services on high holidays. And what this showed me is that Swami is not differentiable from the world around us, and that in creating an individual practice, in finding ways to constantly converse with Swami, be it in the simplest ways of jesting with Swami or joking with him when an unexplainable situation may happen, whether it is in taking quiet moments to listen for Swami's voice in the middle of a chaotic situation, whether it means what I do now, which is to imagine Swami in the passenger seat while I drive to work on a daily basis, and laying out my goals for the day with him and asking him to inspire me to reach those goals if they're the right thing for me and for the organizations that I serve. This is how I have found a deeper sense of kinship with Swami, and how I have moved out of my understanding of Swami solely as a disciplinarian to Swami as a being of incomprehensible love, to Swami as a companion, as an aspect of my life that cannot be differentiated from my own critical thinking and from my own interpretation of the world around me. And for that, I'm very grateful to SSE for giving me that backbone of a relationship with Swami, for creating the channel through which I could reach out to Swami, and to then, once I moved into young adulthood, deepen my bond with him through purposeful choice of having conversations with him, of placing him ahead of any decision that needs to be made, and in listening to the voice that comes through and trusting it. Now, I share all of this and it makes it sound as if I have mastered this practice, and in reality, I am a fraction of the way that I need to be to really stand in my faith in Swami and to make the most of this relationship. I find myself oftentimes frustrated with Swami or unable to hear his voice despite my best efforts at keeping this friendship. I find myself nervous when I think of Swami, or feeling that I must be on my best behavior in order to receive his grace. But in knowing what it means to discuss difficult situations with him, and in having heard his voice even a few times, and having felt his inspiration in terms of a guiding hand behind the actions that I've had to take in many quandaries over the last several years, I have a sense of peace and a sense of happiness that then I can remember to motivate me to continue deepening and building my relationship with him. And through this daily practice and through sincere appreciation of what Swami can offer us, I hope that one day I will be able to grow in my relationship with him to where I no longer see a difference in how I behave and how I feel guided by the God that is within me. So, to the dear SSE students who are listening to this recording, please know that in young adulthood, the relationship with Swami becomes so much more personal and becomes so much more intimate and passionate than you might experience now in your SSE lessons. But please continue to cultivate the understanding of Swami's teachings that will let you to grow in this path throughout your life, because the sense of reassurance and the sense of protection that having this friendship with Swami confers is irreplaceable.